Good evening. Tonight is the fourth time I will present to you a proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And before I do, I have the responsibility and privilege of reporting on our state of the city. I'm proud to be able to report that the state of our city is strong. While we still have more ground to cover, getting to this point has been a story of hard work, teamwork, and dedication. You, the City Council, our professional staff, our citizen boards and commissions, the residents and business persons whom we serve, and our governmental partners in Anne Arundel County, the state of Maryland, and in Washington, D.C. Together, we have made the city strong. When we reflect back upon the last 3 times I presented this address to you, it is truly remarkable not only how rough the waters have been that we've navigated, but how divided we as a community and the 9 of us on this council have been about how to proceed. That first State of the City in March 2010, we were faced with closing a $23 million budget deficit. I did not want our first course of action to be to ask the taxpayers for more funds. So the budget that year made an abrupt course change, cutting expenses and services. Not only did we cut city spending for the first time in 20 years, we cut our budget by a larger percentage of any of Maryland's 157 municipalities, most of whom were facing similarly challenging budgets. During the State of the City that night, our council chambers were packed to overflowing with taxpayers and citizens worried about the state of the city's finances, and with dedicated city employees who had just lost 33 of their coworkers to layoffs 3 days before. A friend of mine who was in the audience that night observed how the grassroots democratic process that was on display here in our city hall was truly a microcosm of the broader national political debate that unfortunately is still stymieing our Congress today. The 2 subsequent states of the city and budgets also addressed serious challenges. We realigned our taxes and fees to reflect the accurate costs of service. We responded to a dramatic drop in the city's assessable base, and we modernized and streamlined our solid waste program, leading to the largest privatization of city services in memory. Through these past 3 years, we have worked remarkably well together towards a shared goal, namely to restore fiscal stability to our city government. While we may disagree on the proper role of government, on the services we should provide, we all agree on the need for our government to pay its bills and live within its means. Getting us back to that point of solvency has required more than balancing the budget. It's required that we rebuild our fund balances, or our piggy bank, so that we have enough cash on hand to absorb the disjointed timing between the receipt of our revenues and the disbursement of our expenses. In just 3 short years, we have almost gotten to the point where we will no longer need to rely on short-term loans for our cash flow. In 2011, we had to take out $25 million in short-term borrowing. Last year, because we had cut our expenses and had already begun to significantly rebuild our fund balances, we reduced our need for short-term borrowing down to $10 million. This year, if we need to draw down a line of credit at all, it will only be in the $2 to $3 million range this fall. In many respects, it's an acceptable practice, both in the private sector and the public sector, for corporations to take out lines of credit. But given where the city was, our short-term borrowing has become symbolic, an indicator for the public of whether we're serious about getting our house in order. And today, as I stand here right now, I can report to you that the City of Annapolis has fully repaid all of our lines of credit and tax anticipation notes, and we have no short-term debt outstanding. Perhaps the best objective measure of the city's financial health is our bond rating. And the rating agencies recognize and value the approach we've been taking. As you know, 2 years ago, Moody's downgraded our bond rating and assigned the city a negative outlook. Last year, in recognition of the prudent fiscal steps we've been taking, Moody's took us off their watch list and restored our stable outlook. Moody's wrote, quote, "The stable outlook reflects the city's proactive measures and expected future commitment to raising revenues and reducing expenditures to improve the city's reserve and liquidity position going forward." So now we are once again enjoying a stable outlook from all 3 major rating agencies. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the work of City Manager Michael Malinoff and Finance Director Bruce Miller. Not only have they guided us well in our policy decisions as a council, they have also overhauled the city's internal processes and controls, brought transparency to our finances, and played a critical role in getting our fiscal house in order. Our finances have been our overriding priority for these past 3 years, but they have not been our only priority. Economic development continues to be a key focus, and as with our finances, we've made great strides. 2 months ago, we cut the ribbon on the city's first ever central permitting counter. This new one-stop shop at 145 Gorman Street brings together all of the departments and agencies that touch a project from the time an application is submitted to when the permit is issued. All permitting, zoning, inspections, and code enforcement, even the fire marshal, are now under one roof and accessible at one new phone number, 410-260-2200. Last year, the City Council streamlined the approval process for everything from major subdivisions to side porch additions, eliminating a time-consuming, costly, and duplicative public hearing. The Historic Preservation Commission, in turn, revised its rules, so now 30% of its applications are approved administratively without a hearing. And the Annapolis Economic Development Corporation, which this council established unanimously, continues to prove its worth. Last year, the EDC helped 16 local businesses stay afloat or expand and has helped recruit more than 60 new companies to Annapolis in just the past 2 years. Currently, it is working with more than 110 businesses to locate, stay, or grow in Annapolis. Our EDC partners with organizations such as Project Opportunity to provide business training to our veterans. They have established their own programs, such as the Entrepreneurs and Inventors Program, which has assisted 35 startups and led to 3 businesses securing direct private funding. And the EDC's efforts have brought Annapolis statewide recognition. Next month, the Maryland Economic Development Association is honoring the creation of the EDC with its Project of the Year award. I'd like to ask the board chair, Reza Jafari, the president and CEO, Laura Fritz, and the other members of the EDC board and staff to please stand. The board is standing with you.
Absolutely. They're here in spirit.
That's right. And Reza is not here, but I want to recognize the founding chairman, Majette Parker, who served with distinction for 2 years, which happened to be the 2 startup years, which is a challenge in itself. Thank you, Majette. Despite the recession, business and development in our city remain active. Last year alone, Maria Broadbent and her team at the Department of Neighborhood and Environmental Programs issued 3,913 permits, conducted 10,653 building and trade permit inspections, conducted 3,816 property maintenance inspections, collected almost $2 million in permit fees, and processed permits for a total construction value of more than $86 million. I'm pleased to report that Annapolis, as always, remains a desirable place for people to live and do business in, and our efforts are making a difference. Despite some recent store closures, all but 2 stores on Main Street are now leased. Last year, more than 100 new businesses opened, including 30 new retail, 13 new food service, 47 new offices, and 3 business expansions. New construction throughout the city is picking up again, and both office and retail vacancy rates are at their lowest levels since 2007. Hand in hand with development is protection of the environment. And as always, development pressures sometimes raise the public's questions about environmental protection. Last year, we in the city reset our development review process to ensure that the environmental features of major development are identified up front at the beginning of the site plan review process. As several of you know, including Alderwoman Sheila Finlayson and Alderman Ian Pfeiffer, the city has appointed a Forest Conservation Act working group to further review and make recommendations both to processes as well as regulatory thresholds and requirements for the city's implementation of the Forest Conservation Act. And as the 2 of you also know, those discussions are still ongoing. It's an important and sensitive issue. The city has made significant steps already to make sure that the environment is safeguarded, and we have more yet to do. On top of our top long-range planning priority remains City Dock, the centerpiece of our town. Relying on significant public input, our planning and zoning department has been working diligently to develop a plan to revitalize our crown jewel, enhance its economic vitality, and ensure that it remains a vibrant community gathering place for years to come. I would like to personally thank the 25 members of the City Dock Advisory Committee whom we recognized when they presented their report a couple months ago. chaired by former Mayor Kurt Schmoke, and specifically commend our Planning Director, John Arison, our former Chief of Comprehensive Planning, who's now our Assistant City Manager, Virginia Burke, and our new Chief of Comprehensive Planning, Sally Nash, for their caring and tireless work shepherding this process for the past 2 years. We cannot have robust economic growth without a solid foundation. By repositioning ourselves financially, as we have been doing, we are now able to focus more on the nuts and bolts. I recently signed a contract to design and build our new water treatment plant. This project will be the largest public construction project in our city's history, and I commend Public Works Director David Jarrell and the entire team that worked on the water treatment plant for a procurement process that will realize roughly 30% savings over the millions of dollars that had been projected. Last fall, the city launched Annapolis's Clean and Green City Initiative, deploying a small army of city workers to bring our town's physical environment up to the condition it deserves. In just the first few months, our city workers reset more than 3,000 bricks, repainted almost 3 miles of curb, repainted more than 100 lampposts and signposts, and weeded the sidewalks on all 29 streets downtown. By restructuring and privatizing our solid waste operation, we realized immediate savings for our ratepayers, and those savings will grow in the upcoming year. We are also answering the call to reduce our footprint on the earth. By restructuring solid waste, we've increased our recycling levels to an average of 287 tons per month, a 20% increase in just 1 year's time. Not only are we recycling more in our homes, several businesses are participating in our commercial recycling pilot program, and we have certified 19 environmental stewards in our business community for their environmentally sustainable practices. Internally, we're continuing to make our government more effective, efficient, and transparent, and hold ourselves accountable for our performance. And some of this stuff is not the most compelling stuff to listen to, but it speaks to our not just financial stability, but making sure that our internal workings are what they need to be. We recently launched our Report It system, a transparent and effective tool online to process and respond to a variety of issues, from potholes to streetlights out to abandoned vehicles and more. Under the direction of City Manager Michael Malinoff and working with the University of Maryland's Institute for Governmental Service and Research, we have collaboratively created a strategic plan to better position us and lend clarity to meet the evolving needs of our community. Also, under Mr. Malinoff's direction, Annapolis is now a participating jurisdiction with ICMA, the International City County Management Association, for its citizen survey. This survey, based on interviews with 1,000 Annapolis citizens, offers a thorough snapshot for how well we as a government are doing and where we need to improve. And by benchmarking our performance against 500 other jurisdictions across the country, we will be better able to hold ourselves accountable for the job we're doing. We've expanded our focus for what used to be the Office of Emergency Management and renamed it the Office of Emergency Preparedness and Risk Management. While undergoing a name change, the staff remains steadfast in their commitment to serve Annapolis residents during times of crisis. This is why the City of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County are among only 7 communities from across the United States selected to be part of the National Community Resilience Project's pilot program, making us more prepared and resilient, not only to deal with disaster when it comes, but to rebuild and respond and get back to normal after it hits. Speaking of resiliency, Hurricane Sandy's effects were sweeping across Annapolis from October 25th through October 31st, and the office, headed up by Deputy Chief Kevin Simmons, responded to the critical requests and needs of the community. I'd also like to mention our call center team, made up of volunteer staff from various departments throughout the city, overseen by Gail Smith, who unselfishly and professionally came together during Sandy and responded to nearly 100 calls for assistance. These people became the voice in the dark for many without power and a means of information to many who did not have power. If you are in the audience, will you please stand and be recognized? Is Chief Stokes here? The Insurance Service Office, is that the name of it? The Insurance Service Office, classifies fire departments on a scale from 10 to 1, with one representing the best level of service. There are no Class 1 departments in Maryland. Last year, there were only 3 Class 2 departments. Now there are 4. For the first time in our history, Annapolis has been elevated to a Class 2 fire department. The public whom we serve should have every confidence in our fire department's ability to respond, protect, and assist them. Our sense of security and public safety is also reflected in our crime rates. While overall crime increased less than 1% in 2012, violent crimes have dropped some 60% in the past 6 years. Last year alone, robberies dropped 24% and reported rapes dropped in half. It's remarkable considering prior states of the city and the different level of concern that public safety has had over the years, how well we are doing in that respect. I would like our exemplary public safety team who is here to please stand and be recognized. Earlier this afternoon, I hosted a delegation from China, and we took a picture in these council chambers, and they wanted to know what the different pictures, paintings on the back wall were portraying. And the one that's behind that screen that we can't really see depicts the layout of Annapolis's grid system with the circles and the radiating streets. And even though Annapolis is an historic and charming town, it also has a reputation for not being the easiest place to get around. Not only do we have parking challenges, and have we had parking challenges for years, but we also are one of the few municipalities in the state to operate our own transit system, which, as many of you know, was not doing too well a couple years ago. To fix our transportation system, we brought in our new transportation director, Richard Newell, and to improve the operation of our parking garages, for the first time in 15 years, we bid out that contract and brought in our own local success story, Town Park. We redesigned our bus routes to use a more efficient arterial system. Through the leadership of Rich Newell, we have focused on maintenance, cleanliness, and customer service. We established the city's first bicycle master plan. We launched our free circulator trolley, and just last month, the City Council voted to merge the Transportation Board with the Parking Advisory Commission, recognizing the interrelated nature of the two. Annapolis Transit's on-time performance has improved from less than 70% to 95%. Our new parking management company has cleaned and modernized our facilities and opened free 24-hour public restrooms in all 4 parking garages. The circulator served over 60,000 riders in its first year and is on pace to more than double that in its second year. And garage occupancy and bus ridership have both increased substantially and continue to grow. Although parking and transportation remain works in progress, we are making real improvements. I would like to ask Transportation Director Rich Newell to please stand and be recognized. And I would also like to ask someone if they could kindly bring me a cup of water or a bottle of water. For those of you who watched the Republican response to the state of the city, I'm not going to. There you go. On the ball. Thank you. All right. Now I have more water than I need. Thank you. Although it's not part of our city government, the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis has been a steadfast partner in serving our mutual citizens and constituents. Due to the remarkable progress HACA has made in stabilizing its own finances and internal controls, for the first time in years, HUD removed HACA from its troubled list and gave it a clean and clear financial audit. HACA established a new court-certified banning program and instituted a restructured grievance panel to hear and respond to tenant complaints. It hosted the highly successful second annual Pathways to Opportunities Family Self-Sufficiency Program and Conference, and Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown recently announced that Anne Arundel Medical Center, in partnership with HACA and the City of Annapolis, was awarded one of only 5 grants statewide to establish a new health enterprise zone at Morris Blum Senior High Rise. The health enterprise zone will establish a full-time medical presence at Morris Blum with 3 full-time employees, and it will not only reduce healthcare costs, but it will improve residents' healthcare by proactively addressing long-term chronic disease and other illnesses. I would like to invite Executive Director Vincent Leggett and the board and the other members of the HECA team who are here to please stand and be recognized. So, I'm just about to present the actual budget for fiscal 14. In the state of the city, I've chronicled some steps and some major steps that have brought us to the point where we are. And even though I've highlighted certain individuals who have taken leadership roles, I think all of us know, and I think the one thing all of us on the council would agree on is that regardless of what you think of the performance I'm doing, the team of department directors that we have assembled, that this council has confirmed, are top-notch. And so for those who I did not call out by name, I'd like to take a minute to recognize the top-notch work of all of our staff. And that brings us to the proposed budget for fiscal year 2014. Given the significant course corrections that we've made over the past 3 years, I'm afraid the fiscal 14 budget may be lacking in similar excitement. In terms of entertainment value, if the past 3 budgets had enough thrills and excitement for a trilogy of Hollywood action movies, then this proposed budget is more like Downton Abbey, only without the drama. And for a city budget, given all that we've been through, that's not a bad theme. The theme of this proposed budget is responsible restraint. Responsible because I remain committed to putting the city's fiscal house in order, and restraint because with the state of our economy, the continued pressure on household incomes, and the contributions we have already asked of our taxpayers, we must pursue our priorities while still living within our means. So here are the highlights, first of the operating budget. The operating budget is largely a level service budget, maintaining the same level of service as last year. It has $94.6 million in expenses, a 1.2% increase over last year. The budget projects revenues of $97.1 million, yielding a surplus of $2.5 million across all funds. The budget proposes to allocate this surplus into our fund balances with the understanding that the council, as part of the budget process, at its discretion, may choose to utilize some of that surplus as part of the collaborative interest-based bargaining process we have underway with our employees' collective bargaining units. And as the council knows, the IBB process is a collaborative attempt to not only address employee needs and ensure that Annapolis maintains a competitive workforce, but also establish a collaborative way that we can continue to make real progress on our long-term personnel liabilities. In terms of taxes, this budget will maintain flat property tax revenues for the second consecutive year. Due to residual adjustments still in our assessable base, the budget will increase the property tax rate by 1.04 cents, from 64 cents to 65.04 cents. Because of individual variations in assessments which are outside of the city's control, some taxpayers will pay slightly less and others will pay slightly more. But again, overall, this budget maintains flat property tax revenues for the second year in a row. What about the size of our workforce? Even though we've had to increase expenses over these past few years in order to fund neglected liabilities, the size of our workforce today is smaller than it was 3 years ago when this council began its term of office. A comparison of apples to apples in which we account for all city employment, full-time, part-time, exempt, civil service, seasonal, permanent, and contractual, indicates that the fiscal year 2010 budget, when we took office, had a workforce of 667 full-time equivalent employees. Today, right now, in the fiscal 13 budget, our workforce is at 618, a reduction of more than 7%. The proposed fiscal 14 budget creates a small handful of essential new positions and reclassifies some existing positions to increase their effectiveness. But due to other reductions elsewhere in the budget, the fiscal 14 budget has fewer net employees than fiscal 13. It reduces, not increases, the size of our workforce. Our capital improvement program, in many ways, is a catch-up year. For much of fiscal 14, we will still be expending bond money that we had allocated in fiscal 13. Still, the proposed $10 million fiscal 14 CIP includes some new funding this coming year for essential and urgent projects. The major new expense in the fiscal 14 CIP is $7.5 million to commence flood mitigation and bulkhead work as recommended by the City Dock Advisory Committee. The CIP also includes in fiscal 14 $750,000 to begin design and engineering for the Hillman Garage. The structural analysis has just been completed, and the Hillman Garage Advisory Committee will hold its first meeting later this week. The CIP includes $220,000 to begin implementation of the beautiful new wayfinding signage program. The master plan is to enable visitors to efficiently get around and navigate Annapolis to reach parking facilities and major destinations efficiently and without complaint. The budget includes roughly $150,000 each for the new community park at Kingsport and for engineering for the long overdue replacement of the Truxton Park swimming pool. And the CIP also proposes a new $250,000 item to enable the city to construct new sidewalks in areas where they are lacking. The sidewalk fund that we established last year allows the city to repair and replace existing sidewalks, but it does not address the need for infill pedestrian sidewalks along major pedestrian arteries. So, as I stated at the beginning, the state of our city is strong. In the past, I said I wanted Annapolis to be the best-run city in the state. Although the ups and downs of the past few years at times may have made it seem like this goal was out of reach, I'm confident that we will get there. Unlike the past 3 years, which required major course corrections on both sides of the ledger, we are now setting sail for calmer waters, to use a maritime analogy. We still have a long way to travel, and we have to continue to act now so that long-term liabilities looming on the horizon do not become new crises in the future. The proposed fiscal year 14 budget does not chart a new course. Instead, it seeks to stay the course and continue the progress we have made. Thank you.